7 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Everybody turn their mics on. How do I do that?
It should be, yep, a little face button. Oh, you got it.
Got it. And we'll have roll call.
Grant,
Here.
Karlovic,
Here.
Kirschman, Hanson,
Here.
Bixler,
He's on Zoom.
Most,
Yes.
Healy,
Here.
Tacky,
Here.
Cruz.
Present. Recognize the quorum.
Ooh, you heard a second. But did you say anything in particular that bothered you?
Somebody saying something?
Yeah.
It's Tom's.
Oh.
No, she was it.
You guys online want to keep the lines muted until you want
In your apartment, or was she talking in the hall?
No, she was
to
talking.
attention that we cut down some of the background noise.
And then right when I came down,
Hey, Tom.
she was.
Tom, if you could keep muted unless you're speaking on something, we can hear all your background noise.
What?
So next up on the
Was she
agenda is
threatening to get in your way?
Are there any items that we want
You're just
to
talking about she was mad at me.
She was. Well, first,
I muted him, but I don't know if he knows when to unmute. Sorry.
Okay. Maybe I'll reach out to him from time to time and see. Any items to be added to the agenda?
No.
Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion to approve, do I have a second?
I have a second it.
Motion and a second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Agenda
Aye.
approved. So now we have the previous meeting minutes, which were the second page in your packet. Any additions, corrections, or deletions to the previous meeting minutes? Tom, Dylan, or Frank?
I'm all good. I'm all good too.
Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes as presented?
I motion to approve it.
I have a motion to approve, a second? Second. Motion and a second to approve the previous meeting minutes as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Aye.
Any conflicts of interest with tonight's items?
No.
Online, guys, any conflicts of interest?
I'm good. I'm all good as well. I'm all good, Casey.
Thank you. Okay. 7:05, we'll move into the agenda item, discussion on drainage ordinance and administration. Who would like to open that discussion? Is that, is it intended to have a public portion of that to start with? Or,
I think whenever we think it's appropriate.
okay,
I have some stats if you want to go over those.
Yeah, come on up, Gary.
So I just did a quick rundown of how many meetings you've had and things the last few years. So drainage meetings 2016, you had 3 with 3 applicants, 17, 3 with 6 applicants, 18, 5 with 8 applicants, 19, 9 with 27 applicants, and 12 were administrative approvals. 2020, we've had, this is the 4th to date, and we've had 3 applicants. Now, when I say applicants, if they were the same applicant over 2 meetings, I still discount them as one, but But so since October 2019 to date, when I started, you've had 5 meetings. 2 approved applicants obtained permits. 1 has not to date, and 2 latest were denied due to the state not signing off. And planning and zoning issued 21 administrative drainage permits this past year. So just to get a quick rundown, and then we can talk about some of the history and things things I've experienced later after we've heard from some of the citizens, if needed.
Okay, thank you. Can I just have you reiterate, there was 5 permits approved by the board this past year and 21 administrative?
5 meetings, 2 approved applicants, yeah. And 1 not to date, and 2 latest ones were denied. Jessica and I had administratively approved 21.
Thank you. There was a insert in the package that came, actually a couple, discussing a number of federal water laws and state water laws, as well as I think there was a Davidson County letter, or I'm sorry, press release. Other discussion or introductory comments by the members at this time?
Right, I guess I'll start. The presentation that was in your packet came from a county commission state convention. And this law firm had given this presentation talking about water laws, etc. And several times during that presentation, they had suggested that county commissions get out of drainage. So you can take that several ways. You have a law firm who's telling you to get out of drainage. So their guidance could be that counties really shouldn't be in drainage because those are state and federal concerns. Or you can take it the other way is, where does the law firm get their main income? They get it from lawsuits. So if the county is not involved to help settle disputes before you get to court, they have more business. So, I mean, those are the 2 extremes of counties shouldn't even be in it because most of the regulations stem from state law and several court cases. And then, of course, you have the federal law as well. So in the discussion they presented, and Gary, you were there, so you're welcome to chime in any time, was that the county really isn't adding regulations to the regulations that are there. The county is serving the purpose to help disseminate those regulations to their county with the goal, and our county has been very successful over the last, how many years drainage has been in place, 8 years, 10 years, I'm not sure exactly when, somewhere around there. We've not had any court cases, to my knowledge, that have come out of all of the discussions in front of this board. So you can take that a couple ways. One, we're doing a fantastic job of trying to mitigate the fights between neighbors. Or people are realizing court isn't really where you need to be settling your disputes. So that is why it's before us, because when we came back, Commissioner Clemish brought up during the county commission meeting that he wanted to have the discussion of the future of drainage in Yankton County. So since I'm on the Drainage Commission, I'm bringing it to you to start this discussion because this board is the closest to the issue. County commissioners are removed from it. Most of this work never reaches the county commission because this board has the authority to make the decisions. And many of it is even administrative. If neighbors aren't seeing a problem and everybody gives the thumbs up, permits issued and everybody goes on their way. If it's a little more involved, some people have concerns, it comes before this board, we talk through it, figure out a solution that kind of meets everybody's needs, and hopefully everybody's happy. There are instances where we deny, and as was the case at the last meeting, the minutes we just approved, where there's a situation that the parties couldn't find a resolution, so we denied the application. So in looking at, I was curious, and I only looked at eastern South Dakota, and that is the colored map that kind of highlights those in pink have drainage ordinances in place today. Those in green, I think it is, do not. And I did talk to some of these counties. Hand County was interesting because they currently don't have a drainage ordinance. And I talked to, I think it wasn't their auditor, I think it was maybe their planning guy, said that they're considering putting one in place because they're starting to get just north of Miller, which is their county seat. They've got some low-lying areas, and some of the stuff being put in is flowing into the city of Miller. So they are now considering putting drainage ordinance in place. Their state's attorney is advising against it. So again, you have concerns over, do we really want to start getting involved in the potential for litigation? I didn't talk to Grant and Dual, but the district up there, like District 3 here, I think they have District 1, said that both of those counties are considering repealing right now. One of them, I think I made mentioned here in the printed version, one of them, I think is it Grant, that he was pretty confident they're going to repeal. The other one, he didn't know if they would or would not. Many of these ordinances were written about the same time. If you look, Roberts County just repealed in May this year as well. And Roberts is up. And a lot of those counties are dealing with prairie potholes, the flooding of recent, and if you pay attention to state law and the whole use of public lakes and access there and taxing now that my land is flooded, that whole issue has really come to the surface up there in that portion of the state. So that's most likely why you are seeing some of these counties changing their approach. I'm trying to think what other, now if you're interested in any of these, most of the ones that I found that had an ordinance, I do have a copy of. I had not read any of those ordinances. There was one county that only oversaw drainage into county ditches. As long as you weren't draining into a county ditch, you could do whatever you wanted to do. But that was the only thing that they still oversaw. Some of the ones I talked to said they've never had an issue. In fact, there was a couple that actually just revised and updated their drainage ordinances, and they have no intention of repealing at this time. So it's in the discussion right now, and some of it stems from lawsuits that other counties are enduring, not necessarily for drainage, but for planning reasons, whatever else it is. And I think counties are getting a little gun shy about, do we really want to be the person in the middle of all of this? And I'm not sitting here saying one way or the other which way we should go. I just want to kind of put some a border around the issue in front of us and to talk through what are good things about our ordinance. What have we avoided over all these years because we had an ordinance in place? What would happen if we repealed it? Where do we see that going? Goods and bads. And then somewhere in the middle ground is, do we have a good ordinance, but we just need to fine tune it to focus more on the issues we truly have been dealing with, which is mainly drain tile, not the issues between a house and another house and another house, and now they're in a dispute over somebody's draining across somebody's front lawn. Those type of drainage issues. So with that, I'll step back and let other people speak, but that's kind of the goal tonight. And I asked Kevin Kirschman, as soon as I found out he wasn't going to be here tonight, I did call him for his input as well. And at some point I will share some of the things he brought up, which I thought he brought up some very good points during our this morning. So I will see the floor now.
Okay, thank you. Other board members, initial comments, thoughts? Sherry's put some good material on the table here.
Does this law firm want us out because they lose business because we're in the drainage business? That's what I'm hearing.
You know, that's always a question. Certainly they make their money off lawsuits, and whether they feel counties are just a third party in the way, I couldn't answer that for you, Tom.
Well, what I'm hearing is that, okay, say we get out of the say we get out of the business, then who handles it if we get out? Because I'm not saying this for my job. I'm saying this for because yeah, they seem to want us out because they make money on their lawsuits. But if we, I mean, I don't mind fine tuning the ordinance if we have to, but if we get out, then whose plate does it go on? Just the federal and state laws?
Yeah, essentially, if the county steps out of it, the state currently does not have a permitting system in place. They do not record anything that is put in the ground, and the feds don't record any of it either. And certainly if you're in the farm program and you want to drain a wetland, that's not going to go over real well with the feds. So from that instance, they do have a little input in that. But if you don't care if you're in the farm program and get any payments from the government, you can essentially do whatever you want to. So, but there would be no mediator if we stepped out of the picture. It would, I hate to say free for all, but to some degree, you could essentially do whatever you wanted.
Well, I'm just saying, from what I'm hearing right now, and again, I'm not saying this for my seat on the Drainage Commission. I'm saying I do not think that it is a good idea to get out of this. If we have to fine tune it, that's one thing. But if we're getting out, then that to me is not a good idea. That is just my opinion and my opinion alone.
Well, that's why we're here, Tom, and thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Any other commission comments?
I guess my thoughts are pretty similar on as to what Tom had to say. I think if you get rid of it, and every county's did, it's going to put way too much onto one person's plate to try to regulate it. I think it's much better for each county to have a drainage board and a county commission work together to come upon what's the best thing, not only for, a town within any county, but the county as a whole. So I think it's wise to keep a drainage board and have the drainage board and county commission work together to go hand in hand, because between those two parties, they know that county much better than anybody else in the whole state. And I feel when you get more minds together that are from the same exact area, you're going to create a better solution for the whole entire county rather than going by a federal or a state law and having them mandate it. Because I'm scared you get rid of all that. In my eyes, I can see some bad things happening. I think we need to have ordinances, but I think that there's some things that we can fine tune, kind of like you said, Sherry. But it just scares me to throw everything off the table. I don't know what it would look like come 20, 25 years down the road, but that's just me.
Thanks, Doug. Anyone else?
Well, I have to agree with what they're saying. I've been involved in this since day one. Panel commissioners, when they decided that they should have something like this. And had this been in place before my neighbor Kyle, I still would be fighting the issue that I'm fighting today. And short of taking him to court, you know, I'm still have an issue with it. So that being said, I think nothing but positive out of this. Now, granted, I'm already aware of what, you know, took place in this other one and looking for other ideas, how to solve that problem, but, you know, it's still fresh in some of our minds, those of us that are old enough to over with deal over there. And that ruined a whole bunch of lives. You know, and there's nothing that gets anybody's blood pressure up higher is water. Either the lack of or the too much of. So I think we need to keep forging ahead and you gotta amend something to work something. We should look at that.
Thank you, Craig. Any other commission members, opening thoughts?
I spoke with the past applicants and contractors alike. And for the most part, they thought if we tweaked and made some modifications to the ordinance, that they could live with it. To be a little more friendly to the end user. And, you know, with that, they thought that we should keep it with some modifications.
Anyone else?
I'll just read a few of the things Kevin shared with me this morning. He thought our ordinance has done a good job helping settle issues before they became big issues. He feels we work together better when we have a forum with which to discuss the issue, and essentially mediators in there. Let's see, I did ask him, I said, so if we keep it, would you have any changes? And he did say consistency is a big one, that he has seen some inconsistencies, like with ditches. Sometimes we've allowed drainage into a ditch and sometimes we have not. So being consistent is important. Folks needing another permit as long as the original outlet is the same, he didn't feel there would be a reason to re-permit. So these would be things to update in the ordinance to make it better. So if the easements are in place and there's no complaints when the letters are out, there's no reason to go before the board. If there's issues, the board is certainly the place to help settle those issues. One nice thing about the requiring people to be notified is that maybe they want to add on to the project to save money. We've had that in the past where people are like, oh, I wish I would have known about that. I'd have added on, and now it was too late to get their permit in place. So he felt that either the notification that's sent out or you require someone to actually go to their neighbor and say, hey, would you sign off on this to ensure that they know about the project. Drainage is always changing, so this is a place for folks to work together again. He did say he had heard this law firm speak before somewhere, and that they have always told counties to essentially get out of drainage. So they've always been against drainage boards. Yankton County has so far worked as it should. He did suggest that if we do choose to keep this, that we have training, yearly training for any updates in laws, so that we better understand how to analyze tile, etc. A lot of times we rely on our experience versus maybe trying to seek to learn new things. And I thought that was a very good suggestion as well. The other thing that he said was it would be nice, because sometimes he gets a call from someone who says, yeah, we put our tile project in, we're great, or somebody asked about it, he said, well, I didn't even know we had a project over there. Well, it was an administrative permit, so he felt maybe it would be beneficial for all of the board to, I think you said there was 21 administrative, just to say, hey, we gave these permits, if you want to review them, and then just pass them down the road so we understand kind of where tile is going in the county for the next time a project comes before. So, I mean, that's not a huge deal. It wouldn't change the procedure at all. It would just say, well, these are the permits and everybody can review. So, and again, very few to go to the county commission would be the goal. There's no reason this board can't handle it unless it's a place where you're completely changing the whole drainage structure and you're going over a hill where you normally wouldn't. That would be a county commission. So those are some things that Kevin shared this morning.
Sherry, where is this law firm located at? Just out of plain curiosity.
Minnesota?
Are they Minnesota?
I think so.
Okay, so this law firm that is telling our counties to get out of drainage isn't even based here. And so are the other counties that have gotten out of drainage getting out of it based on, if I can ask, supposedly the influence of this law firm?
No, Tom, I don't think so. I think they have their own reasons for getting out of it. And like I said, up in the northeast part of the state, the whole climate has kind of changed over the last 5 to 8 years with the flooding and et cetera. So I think they're just seeing different issues in different parts of the state.
Okay.
So Tom, this, as you'll note on the presentation, this wasn't solicited by the Drainage Commission or the County Commission. This was a presentation given at a water.
Yeah, it was a state
convention. Yeah, and so it's just being provided to us as a resource, not as a direct imposition on the Yankton County ordinances.
Right, okay.
Any other comments before we would see if there's any public?
I guess this is Frank here. I guess I'm the last one. I guess like Craig and Kevin and I was one of the first founders on this board, and we had a lot of discussions when we first started this, before they even started. And I think overall we've done a good job with the ordinance already. You know, I can see now, you know, over all the years, there could be some tweaks that we could change and stuff. I know there's some projects that didn't go because, for example, the last one, the blue line, I know there were some other ones up there by Lesterville that didn't go because they didn't have a blue line. And then I know there's some projects that went, that they were in a blue line, then there was questionable, like draining down the ditch, like Kevin said, or a blue line that was kind of a flat blue line. So there has been some gray area when we've done these things. Speaking about like the State Lake one where it was kind of flat there by that one landowner. But overall, I think the whole drainage board has been a good thing. But I guess I do have a little bit of concern because I know this has been brought up over the last year or so, about drainage down here by the lake, by houses, and more it gets developed. I want to say south of Highway 50. You know, what part is our drainage board going to have on that down the road? So I guess there is some concerns I do have. If it's just agriculture, or are we going to deal with also the developments that are going on in our county?
Yeah, and that's been one of my biggest concerns along the way, having been on this board for only 2 years now. My personal opinion on that is we don't want to get into that type of drainage. My personal opinion, we need to stay focused on tile projects, larger ones, mainly in the A district. So I fully understand that concern.
and my concern now, you say that, my concern is, so now we're picking and choosing from development and agriculture, and I've seen a lot of good out of this, but I'm saying that I could tile my house where I sit here, and then my field that's 100 yards from me, I have to get a permit. So that's why I'm saying there, that's probably more of a concern to me than nothing. I could tile, my house to the road ditch, but my field I cannot tile. I'll have to get a permit to tile. So I think that's something we need to decide if we're going to add or not add, and there might be more things come up down the road that we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, and I don't know on that if you would go on a size, your house is acre or two that you would drain, and your field is certainly bigger than 100 acres if you're going to be putting in a tile project. So, Frank, I'm a little unsure on, exactly how you would put the edges around your limitation, but I think you could certainly do it around that.
Thank you, Frank. So unless anybody else has additional comments, it's 7:33, and I'll open the floor if there's any public input to this discussion. Open the floor or open the mic. If you do choose to come to the mic, please state your name and your comments.
If I may, I'm a little clearer without a mask. My name is John Gunderson. I was a member of this board for many years. I think it is helpful to know how this board was established. Back in the 1950s, Adolf Hofer decided he didn't want his neighbor's water, and he built a dam. And that feud with Whiff family continued until the early 1980s, when Andrew Whiff Jr. figured out a way to get water around that dam and into a road ditch. And he had a nice big tractor and loader, and he had a small chisel plow on the back of it. And he cleaned that ditch out, spilled dirt down into the low spot, and he filled it up. And he had it pretty well cleaned out when Dennis Hofer came out, the son of Adolf. There's only one version of what happened afterwards. But Dennis shot Andrew Jr. and Andrew Sr. in the ditch. Dennis Hofer is still in the penitentiary. He's 82 years old. His family has petitioned that he be released because of the coronavirus. He's in poor health. His family lost the farm in the resulting civil suit. Dennis Hofer, the parole board said, well, yes, you've served your 25 years on your first degree murder conviction, but the sentence is worth consecutive, so you've got to serve the next 25 years before we're going to release you. The legislature, upon hearing this case, which was just south of east of Freeman, said, well, with the federal interest in the swamp buster law, I think the state should take a lead and authorize the counties, because the counties are the first line of defense. And there was some things in the code where the county had jurisdiction to resolve disputes. The reason for that was to keep it out of the courts. As one Supreme Court decision said, every drainage dispute is unique. And by having the counties involved, it was hoped that by the legislature that the courts would then have a lot fewer cases to deal with. And drainage is a complicated issue. As Mark Twain said, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over. So starting in the 90s, some of us started working with county commissioners and trying to get the third vote. And we had some success, which over 20 years finally worked out to our current ordinance. And the rise of this ordinance came because corn, land got expensive, corn got high, and people could afford to do it. And the remit to the board was essentially tile drainage. What has been near unique in the state is that we set up the drainage ordinance and set up a drainage commission. And we worked for a year and a half to come up with rules. And we generally have followed those rules. The first probably 50 permits after we established the Drainage Commission were, many of them, extremely contentious. But we fine-tuned those rules, and we have generally stuck to them. And they have generally said, you have to get to a blue line. If you can't get to the blue line, you have an easement. We have had challenges. We have had people who have not been happy. Those people have gone to lawyers. The lawyers have looked at our ordinance. They've looked at how we arrived at our decisions, and they've told their clients that they probably have a very important chance of challenging Yankton County ordinance in court. I've been in many discussions both prior to and after this ordinance, trying to work with people and trying to calm them and trying to move forward in various ways to everyone's benefit. This ordinance is not set up to benefit the big guy. It's not set up to benefit the little guy. It's set up to be fair to all. I think the main reason that this ordinance has been a success, and again, I said the near unique function of this is we have drainage, which generally has had many farmers on it and willing to sit here some nights for 4 or 5 hours and listening to various people talk and dispute. One particular meeting comes to mind one night, and I ended up having to chair it. But we had this side of the room full of 30 people who were very angry and upset. Craig remembers this night. 2 guys sitting over there all by themselves. They had a heck of a good idea. We didn't give them a permit because they didn't have a good enough idea. And they weren't willing to work with their neighbors. We have had deals where people came in here shaking with rage and crying in one meeting and coming in a month later and saying, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. My God, my life just got better. Those are the ones that you remember. Those are the ones that you work towards. Now, I realize that you can get sued over anything. I don't need to go into those details. But when the court cases start piling up, and the threatened court cases, if you have a process that is fair, and you follow that process, you greatly limit the opportunity for a lawsuit to, anybody can sue. Anybody with $100 and can crawl to the courthouse can sue. But they haven't done it on drainage because this board has done a good job. This board has been willing to spend the time and the effort to listen to people and to be fair with people. We had someone come in a year or so ago and they wanted a permit. And we said, wait a minute, you don't have an easement across this guy's ground. Well, he won't mind. I talked to him. So the guy shows up, downstream guy, and he goes, I didn't agree to that. I don't want that. And he said, I'm really upset. And I said, okay. Did they get the permit? Well, no. Were you here and we still turned him down? Well, yeah. I said, why are you upset? He goes, I guess I shouldn't be. I mean, this is what this board and commission has done. I know from talking with Sherry, they talk about the County of Maui case. And that is a serious case. When you read Justice Thomas's decision in the Supreme Court on that case, very briefly, the County of Maui, essentially the city, is dumping sewage in the ocean, essentially untreated. And they were sued by an environmental group and went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, this shouldn't be. But the Clean Water Act has a loophole in it. And the Supreme Court sent it back to the Ninth Circuit and then back to the trial court to say, does this loophole apply in this case? That was a question you didn't answer. Now, we have a similar situation in Yankton County. Yankton County administers a community of 5,000 people with no sewer system. And they are dumping sewage into the Lewis Park Lake Missouri River. As the administrator, they are responsible for that action. True, that is a drainage issue, but it has nothing to do with ag drainage. So, are there some problems? Yep. Do they need to be addressed? I think so. But abolishing this commission is not going to solve those problems. Corn prices are on their way back up. People are going to want to start to tile again. You know, it's funny, at $2.50 corn, nobody wants to buy any tile. Now we're pushing $4. Guess what? So we're heading for the same thing again. We've had 2 or 3 years of low grain prices. And now they're on their way back up and people are going to want to tile. We don't want to look like what Truder County does. Where you've got 2 or 3 tiles in a fence line, the road's washing out in the spring. It's utter chaos. We don't want to have to depend on the laws, lawyers, and courts because it takes 2 to 3 years to get a case through the court system. There's a priority in the court system. They are overwhelmed with drug, property, and other felonies. And then they have the residue of broken families and abuse. And a drainage dispute in a court system has a very low priority. If we can solve those problems here, we are far better off here.
Thank you, John. Anyone else?
Maybe just a couple of observations.
Feel free to step up to the mic, state your name.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Cook-Huber. I'm an attorney here in town. This is a topic that interests me. And so I came in tonight mostly to hear from you what this is all about. So I did not prepare for any discussion. But as I was listening, I understand the purpose of this commission. A lot of what you do is about title, and drainage permits and things of that nature. But I wanted to address a couple things as the advice that you received from the Minnesota lawyers, and then hand county state's attorney. And I want you to recognize there has to be a difference. The counsel that you're hearing from in Minnesota likely handles civil litigation. The state's attorney that is saying get out of drainage would have no interest in pursuing any cause of action because he's a state's attorney. That's not the kind of work that they do. So I would be interested in knowing or finding out why they're giving the advice that they're giving. You know what? Because you're looking at 2 different kinds of lawyers. So why, are they coming with the same kind of information? I don't know for sure, but I think that would be interesting to know. Also, as I understand the ordinance, I believe that individuals can go directly to the circuit courts. So I think that this commission is probably a very friendly place for people to come and get their permits. And I think the individuals that know they're going to be up against someone with their arms crossed and their heels dug in will likely just go to the circuit courts anyway. And it will save time. So I think the Drainage Commission really is a good thing, but I also know that right in your ordinance, it says that people can go to the circuit court if they want to. So this is actually a very friendly, informal place to do this, and a lot less expensive for people. Length of the permit, there was some suggestion that if, so long as the individual continued with the same end game, that his permit would remain. However, I would ask you to consider that when you have someone who has a permit for an extended period of time, the land around them will change. Things will get developed. And so I think it is important to put some sort of limitation, expiration date, if you will, on those permits, or at least something that says they need to come in and explain where they're at, if things have changed, to recognize, that things have developed and changed around them, because it's going to be affecting people perhaps that it wouldn't have affected before. I thought that the gentleman on the phone had a good point about how do you determine whether you pick and choose when you talk about agricultural and residential, and I thought that he had a really good point about that, because in all of this you have to have fairness, and that goes to notice, which you also talked about, which is required by due process. So that one is a kind of a gimme. But when I did just kind of briefly look at this today before I came in, I noticed that the main purpose of this back in 2012 anyway was just the tiling. So I would agree that having the Drainage Commission is important. But I think that you can weed it down to some very limited purposes, with some exceptions, of course. But it's pretty broad. And I think that you would be doing yourselves and your constituents a good thing by being more definitive in what it is exactly that you do. So that's just my observations while I sat here, so thanks.
Thank you.
Any others?
This is Frank here. Could I step in real quick about the last comments on the last lady?
We have, go ahead.
Okay, it just brought to my attention, our drainage is pretty much about tile and stuff. And I know there's been some instances of surface drainage and stuff too. And I think that's something we need to talk about down the road if we decide to change our ordinance. I just wanted to make that comment before, so we do talk about that.
Thanks, Frank. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Dan Clemish, Yankton County Commissioner, and I'm also the chairman of the James River Water Development District. First off, I'd just like to thank each and every one of you guys for serving on this board. I've served on the Planning Commission and other boards, and I know how tough it is. And so thank each and every one of you for your service to the county. It's much appreciated. Second off, to correct Sherry a little bit, this isn't something that I'm pushing for. It's something when we went to that meeting, the attorneys were like, you should assess and see if this is still appropriate for your county. Like was mentioned, a lot of counties and their state's attorneys have determined that the liability in some circumstances is not worth the risk. We have had multiple requests for residential drainage. I think we still get that one from Mr. Desai regularly wanting us to step in for drainage out in that area. And we also had multiple requests during the March 2019 flood. Everything from people turning their neighbors in for sub pumps running in the ditch and requesting enforcement through our drainage ordinance. So it sounds like the board wants to keep it and modify it, and that's great. But those are some things I think that we need to possibly look at, making it explicit and exactly what it deals with. If it's gonna not deal with residential drainage, let's make that perfectly clear right away. And then, second off, I had Mr. Vetter. He served in Brown County. pretty familiar with working with those guys on the James River Board. And they went through a similar process. So Gary, I don't know when I'm done, if you want to come up and talk about your experience you had with Brown County, sure, why Brown County went through the steps that they did. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak here tonight, and again, thank each and every one of you for your service to Yankton.
Thank you.
Maybe I can fill in a little bit about why the state's attorneys are looking at this in various counties. Some of the issues we had were what were the county's goals in giving out all these permits? If 98% of them were approved right off the top, and that was one of the questions that came up. And NRCS and other departments are involved in water, and like Sherry mentioned with the farm program and things. During the flooding, we had a lot of people that were just trenching ditches and draining water, various spots, even across watersheds and everything else. And it was just out of control at that time. And so they thought, why are we in the middle of it? That was one of the things that came up. We've had citizens tell us that, they get a permit approved. The contractor comes out and says, this project would probably drain better even if we went this direction. And a lot of times the projects were changed after the fact. And so again, the counties said, why are we approving this? And then if they get changed after the fact, so that was another thing that they asked about, why are we in the middle of this? Let's see. Same thing with the sizes. People have told us in the past that and this is their discussion, is that they said the contractor would get out there and maybe only have a 6-inch tile instead of 4-inch tile on the truck. And so then they just go ahead and put it in, even though they were only approved for 4-inch. These are just some of the things that were brought to our attention in the past. Citizens and with the wetland issue that we talked about, especially during the flooding, there was a lot of people that were getting too close to the wetlands. And again, that's regulated by NRCS generally. And so the counties were wondering why they were involved in that. And we've had, like we talked about, citizens that want to talk more about surface drainage than drain tile. And a lot of it is just, and the timelines, they felt that it would probably be more to the benefit of the farmers. A lot of times, especially after the flooding occurred here when I first started, there was a lot of reaction to, okay, now we're finally able to put this stuff in. We need to do it next week versus 3 months from now. And so they appreciated the fact that they were able to move forward without the counties getting in the middle of it. So that was just some of the things that we found that why a lot of the state's attorneys have been recommending to their commissions that they just got out of the middle of this. I do agree that since I've been here, I think this drainage commission is great. And the drainage really well in this county. And to Mr. Gunnarson's statement, I think there can be a lot of good being in the middle of that, but those are just some of the issues that historically have happened that caused a lot of these counties to get out of it. We went from approving permits. Another option that we started with is we started approving projects per our state's attorney's recommendation. We then moved to acknowledging permits versus approving in them. And then they finally decided, well, if that's all we're doing is acknowledging, maybe we don't need to be in this business, and they decided to repeal. So that's just kind of the history.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? We look forward to hearing. Yeah.
Yes, Chad Island's of Utica. Well, where do I start from the last meeting? Well, the past couple weeks I've been on the phone with the help of Jessica. She gave me the number of the USGS in Denver, Colorado, Virginia, and the lady in Virginia flat out told me she couldn't help me with the blue line issue. Well, same way with Denver. She recommended me talk to Rapid City. Well, the person I talked to in Rapid City had no idea what a blue line meant or what it signified or nothing. I had to explain it to her. Well, she couldn't help me, so she had me transferred to Sioux Falls. Well, he knew what the blue line meant, but my intention was to get the blue line extended. And the only way to extend it is ask Washington, D.C. for billions of dollars to recertify it. Well, that's not going to happen. Well, I also asked Jessica for other numbers. I didn't get very far. So I went to the FSA, and they gave me the number to the Army Corps of Engineers. And the gentleman said they look at the blue lines to determine if they need to regulate the water, but they do not extend or retract the blue line. And I had a 3-hour discussion with the gentleman, and he kind of felt bad for me because he thought it was a joke to him. So I don't know if this is my last meeting to just forget the drain tile, or is there something down the road where we can kind of put in the policy where if you got an unruly neighbor, which is the South Dakota Game Fish Parks, that won't get the easement for, what do you say, Casey, 200 feet? I mean, well, why should I lose my part of putting a drain tile to improve my ground to farm just for 200 feet? I don't know what to do anymore. So it's kind of hope something down the road gets changed in the policy, or I just need to give up. I don't want to give up, but I guess if that's all I got to do, it's all I got to do. And I don't know if you want my scribbling numbers, but you can have these numbers and call them. I mean, I just don't know what to tell Dad and the neighbor about the drain tile. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
No, it's good.
Any other comments from the public? It's 8 o'clock. Maybe not seeing any others. We'll close the public input portion of this, and I'll ask the board to share any additional comments that they may have following what they've heard. Sorry, guys, online, I said I would ping you from time to time. It's hard to tell whether there's no indication that a hand's raised or anything, but anybody there? Tom, Frank, Dylan?
This is Frank here. I guess I apologize for interrupting, but I going back to the surface drainage, tile drainage, I know there was some surface drainage done the last year or two because they couldn't tile. We denied a permit. Next thing you know, he's in there with the backhoe and he's did a surface drainage. So I know there's issues with our ordinance. I don't know how we're going to correct it, or And then, you know, we got Chad. I know there's been some other ones. They haven't got to the blue line, but the flows are there and the project should work. So, and I know, like Sherry said, that Kevin said we've used road ditches to get to blue lines too, and we haven't been 100% consistent on that stuff either. So I think if we keep the ordinance, we need to maybe do some tweaking to the ordinance. That's my comment here.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else? Commission members?
I agree with Frank on this. I was listening to Jan's comments, and part of me was thinking, if he goes to all these places and they pretty much tell him that what he's talking about seems to be a joke to them, sometimes I wonder, I know that all of the organizations that he talked to are respected ones, but it's like, you know, if you don't know anything about what Jan is talking about, then I'm thinking, what do you do? Because you're going, Jan is giving you his information that he needs to, and you're very much telling him that this must be a joke or you're wasting our time. So it's like, if that's all he's going to get, then what is their purpose? That's just my opinion.
Thanks, Tom. Others?
So what I'm hearing right now is a general consensus from the commission board members that we would like to keep what we have. Am I good in saying that? I don't think I've heard anyone say that we need to rescind it, revoke it, repeal it.
Yeah, I'd agree, Sherry. I think that we keep it, but just as what Tom and what Frank and what we've all been talking about, I think we just need to do some fine tuning to the ordinances. That's what I feel. I feel we strongly need the drainage board. I really do.
Okay, because my job will be to report back to the county commission at the feeling of this overall board, and I think it's overwhelmingly that we feel what we have is working, and we'd like to keep it, but improve it.
Motion?
No, don't need a motion or anything.
Well, I may take just a couple of minutes and share my thoughts based both on what I heard and the reaction to some of the information that was presented. I too feel a lot like my fellow commission members. Local control is the best control on this issue. I really related to Gary Cook-Huber's comments on some of the data behind some of the information that's being stated by various lawyers, but being a water and a river manager myself, if you look at the distribution on this map that was provided to us of the orange and greens, it's interesting that the orange counties, it'd be interesting to overlay the James River on top of the orange counties. If you look at your terminal water source from these drainage projects, there's a huge difference between a terminal water source being a river and a terminal water source being a glacial lake or a large prairie wetland, like we have up in this north central part of our state, where we've got, in the last few years, tremendous flooding issues where we're covering sections of water by the terminal water source being, whether it be Lake Poncet or a Compesca or a dry lake, which is taken, or a Lake Thompson, which has taken sections and sections of land and put them underwater. You are going to fight over that stuff, and counties are going to get caught in the middle of it. We're in a unique position here that we have several flowable drainage bodies within our county. We have our southern border by one of the largest rivers in our country, and we have the James River that comes down through the eastern part of it, actually through the central of the county. And so there really is some unique differences that we have as opportunities here to provide a transparent and a consistent drainage policy within this county. I too share Dylan's concern about if we get rid of this thing and we go to a chaos, we'll have chaos. John's right, water's for fighting about. And I think one of the key things that I heard here tonight that is really in support of Yankton County's drainage ordinance, and that is the consistent application by this board of that. We have to stay, there's some things we can improve. Obviously, we've heard some of those tonight. There may be more out there. But one of the things is that we need to consistently apply that ordinance. Some of the concerns that I heard from the other counties was an inconsistent application of their ordinance, lack of enforcement of the ordinance, which then will lead to chaos of drainage in those counties as well. It's easy to make the rules. We all know that it's easy to make rules for the most part, but it's damn hard to enforce them and to be consistently enforcing those rules out there. And so I think that Yankton County's ordinance is really set up as a fair process. Just like John said, it's not for the little guy, it's not for the big guy, it's a fair process. And what this board provides, what this commission provides is a transparent communication conduit so that everyone involved in that project is made aware of it or affected by that project is made aware of it. If they're directly affected, they have to confirm their support of it through an easement or what have you. And I think that that's really why, you know, Sherry, as you brought up, the real lack of litigation when it comes to the implementation of this. I came here to this board really thinking about water management, really thinking about river management. But what this really does is it's about the people management. It keeps us from fighting in the county. It keeps us from shooting each other. The history of this thing started way back when. And it's about making sure that we're communicating. Every step of this ordinance really goes to, you know, are we affecting the downstream receivers? Have we notified the people that are going to be affected by this? Are we consistent applying it? And I think that's the power of this thing. It's really about us as a county being able to make these decisions in a consistent fashion. So I too support the ordinance. I think that there's things that we obviously have brought up a number of different times that we can work on improving this ordinance. And so that's my comments in addition to what you have heard from my fellow commission members here, Sherry, to take back to the commission. Anything else? I think we heard Sherry say she doesn't need a motion of that. Has everybody stated what they'd like to state for Sherry to take back as the board members?
No, if you would like to make a motion to make a statement, I'm good with that, but I don't require it. So if you care to make it and you want everybody to vote, so it's a 9-0 or something to make a statement, I'm good with that. So, but I
think it's important that we should vote on this so that the county commission officially knows what we mean. Yes, Sherry, you can tell them, but I think it's important for them to have our votes and say to them that we all want to keep this drainage ordinance and this drainage commission.
Absolutely, Tom.
So hearing that, I would entertain a motion as chairman from the board. Anyone is so inclined?
I will make a motion that we keep our drainage ordinance with tweaking, and that we keep the drainage commission.
I'll second it.
Okay, so I have a motion from Tom that to retain the Yankton County drainage ordinance. with tweaking.
Yes, with tweaking.
With tweaking, and also to retain the Yankton County Drainage Commission. And I have a second to that. Any further discussion?
Yes, this is Frank here. I don't know if we should use tweaking or like to say that we'd like to maybe revise or go over some of the Drainage Commission on this amendment.
That's what I meant, Frank. I should have picked my wording better.
No, that's all right.
What was the word that was recommended?
Revise.
Revise. With revisions. Tom, do you support that recommendation or that amendment?
Yes, I do support it.
Craig is second to that. Do you support it?
Yes, I do.
They will amend the motion to read that to retain the Yankton County Drainage Ordinance with revisions and also the Yankton County Drainage Commission. Any further discussion?
I guess this is, so if we're going to revise it, or as a board, are we going to clarify some of this stuff, or are we going to do some meetings, or what's the thoughts about that part of it? So Sherry knows what we're looking to do, or don't you have to answer that right away, Sherry?
You know, Frank, I don't think I have to answer that right away. I think this is an initial, I hate to say a fishing expedition a little bit to kind of test the waters and really see where we want to go. If it's overwhelmingly that we feel we need to keep it, then we will have future meetings to see how we need to adapt it to what we're doing today. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Yeah, that does. I just wanted to clarify.
But with that said, everybody here tonight needs to think about what we need to do to revise it. So we don't wait until the meeting and then all of a sudden we are all thinking at the meeting. So give it some serious thought. Sit down and read that ordinance again. It's been a while since I read it front to back, and figure out what needs to be adjusted. So I do ask everyone to do that in the meantime.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. Motion and a second to retain the Yankton County Drainage Ordinance with revisions and to retain the Yankton County Drainage Commission. Hearing no further comments, we'll have a roll call vote.
Grant,
Yes.
Krylicek,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Bixler,
Aye.
Loest,
Yes.
Healy, Tacky,
Yes.
Cruz.
Yes. Motion carried. Do we need any further discussion tonight? I guess I look to Sherry as our commission rep, county commission rep. Do we need any further discussion on this agenda topic item tonight?
No, I don't think so. And just like I said, give it a lot of thought, because I'm sure we'll be having meetings now that it's winter time and nobody has anything to do, right? We have all kinds of time to have meetings to figure out the future.
Okay, we'll close that agenda item. Looks like I'm seeking a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Thank you guys for bearing with us remotely and for your comments. Meeting adjourned.
And to the public for coming.
Yes, very much.